Hello, I'm Nathan B. Butler, author of a Saga on Home Video and host of From the Star Wars Home Video Library here on YouTube, and this is Star Wars Home Video Year by Year. This time we take a look at 2006. Last year was a big year. 2005 was a huge episode here because it's when Revenge of the Sith hit theaters, then hit home video. Some store exclusives came into play, different animated series came into play, so it was a pretty heavy year the previous year. 2006 isn't quite as crazy, but it's also a major year for Star Wars Home Video. That is because this is the year that the so-called unaltered editions hit home video in the form of bonus discs with some reissues of previously released discs for the original trilogy. It's a little bit of an oddball type thing here, so we'll hit it as succinctly as we can. We know that I can't do that very well. And then we will move on to other stuff here within 2006. But the bulk of this is going to be about that original trilogy re-release. So I actually have a couple of sets of these, so very quickly let's look at a couple examples of these just to see how they were being advertised on the packaging. Then we'll look at the individual items. So this is an example of A New Hope in its widescreen release in the US for 2006. We'll look at this more specifically when I can show you one without the shrink wrap, but if you notice there, the sticker says, limited time only, includes the digitally remastered movie and the original theatrical version. That is very much a from a certain point of view thing, as we will see. The full screen versions also bore the same sticker. Now, getting away from my sealed spares there for a moment, let's take a look at them where we can see them a little bit better without the shrink wrap. So this was A New Hope here. It says widescreen limited edition. Okay. New packaging here, gold for widescreen. It's going to be blue for full screen, as we just saw a moment ago. So now we're doing the scheme that matches what happened with the prequels. All of a sudden, we then have a widescreen version of The Empire Strikes Back, a widescreen version of Return of the Jedi, a full screen version of A New Hope, as we saw sealed a moment ago, a full screen version of The Empire Strikes Back, and a full screen version of Return of the Jedi. Now the key thing here is what is inside. There's 2 discs per film this time, released individually unless you got a special set at Best Buy. Otherwise, there is no trilogy box set this year. That'll wait until 2008. So this is an example of A New Hope in its 2006 form. The contents is the same as 2004. You'll notice, though, comparing to the 2004-2005 discs here, that there are some differences. You have the gold here that was originally just on full screen for our label. It does say A New Hope underneath it, as this one did, so just a different color scheme. But notice FBI warning stuff on the new discs, but not on the old discs. You'll also note for comparison purposes here that in 2004, the difference between the discs was that widescreen was silver in coloration to basically match the packaging for widescreen, whereas full screen was gold, but neither was marked as either widescreen or full screen. Here in 2006, they're both using the gold coloration that would have been full screen, as I mentioned a moment ago, but notice that they each say either full screen or widescreen up above the Roman numeral. So again, those discs were effectively identical to what we saw in 2004, just with new labels. So this is their 3rd time being issued. Well, they also then came with a bonus disc. Here's the one for A New Hope. All 3 of them have bonus discs. We'll very quickly look at them. What is on this bonus disc? It's actually identical, regardless of whether you're looking at the full screen or the widescreen copy of the film. So the first disc differs between packages. The second one does not. And just to properly catalog here, of course, there's Empire and there's Jedi. Now, what's on those bonus discs is purportedly the unaltered theatrical version. Again, it says original theatrical version on the sticker, original theatrical version, or original theatrical movies in this case, on the back. But is it, though? So you can make an argument that, yeah, sure it is, right? It's the pre-special edition versions of the film, which is really what most people cared about at the time, which is why people just gobbled these things up like crazy. Is that really the theatrical version, though? Not really. So what they basically did was they went to the cleanest pre-special edition version that they had of the films on home video. That, of course, was the 1993 Definitive Collection Standard Play Laserdisc set. They used those masters to create these bonus discs of the unaltered edition. George's original unaltered trilogy, or GOUT, as it has come to be called. That's not quite the original version, though, right? We know that with A New Hope in theaters originally, there was no opening crawl or episode number. How did they deal with that? Well, in this case, what they did was they took that 1993 master, chopped off the opening crawl and everything at the beginning, and then scanned a nice film copy and slapped in on there. So technically, this is a new cut of A New Hope. It's 1993 with a film copy of the opening slapped onto it. But beyond that, A New Hope, remember, got an audio remastering in 85 for release in 86. All of them got a remastering for the Definitive Collection, which then showed up in the UK in 94 on VHS, and then 95 across the world as a THX Remastered Edition. And it really kind of comes down to, do you think minor tweaks for the THX Remastered Edition, and in the case of Jedi, mostly just cleanup, does that make it a new version? I would argue yes, but a minor new version, but still not exactly the same version. But for those who are less purist in that sense, who are just looking for something prior to the special editions, then yes, we basically got what we wanted. But even then, still not quite. Because back then, we were really hoping to have something in anamorphic widescreen. Let's watch it in the same quality level as those new cuts from 2004 that are on the first disc of each set. No such luck. When you pop these things in, it is, again, based on the 1993 masters. And what were those laser discs? They were letterboxed. So it's a 4:3 image, widescreen image across the middle, black bars burned in, built in on top and bottom. So you were getting sort of a full screen sized image with widescreen inside it for, again, the traditional letterboxed method of presenting a widescreen film here. And the compression wasn't great, the transfer wasn't great. It was certainly a flawed product. But for those who had been looking for something that would give them the original theatrical versions, or something at least close, something pre-special edition on home video to play on a modern player, that was a way to do it. And they celebrated it with a lot of store exclusives. The one place you could get sort of a boxed set of these without having to get them individually was to go to Best Buy. At Best Buy, they had this collector's tin. This is my sealed copy. Up at the top, Best Buy exclusive collectible tin includes all 3 DVDs. It's really 6 DVDs. It's all 3 DVD releases. And again, it still says original theatrical movies and all that stuff there on the back. The actual tin, once you open it up, is pretty nice. A little bit odd in the sense that it actually opens from either side, which is kind of weird. But inside, it's just the widescreen copies we just saw of the films. Widescreen was the only version available in the collectible tin, and this was, again, the only way to get a box set of these prior to 2008. Recall from a moment ago that when sealed, you have the sticker on here for all of these that say limited time only, includes the digitally remastered movie and the original theatrical version. Well, if you went to Target and wanted to get it in widescreen, again, only widescreen, then you had some more options again for exclusive versions. I'll show you these that are sealed first. So in the case of A New Hope here, it says limited time exclusive concept art inside. Also includes bonus disc with original theatrical version. So we have A New Hope with its sticker, Empire with its sticker if you're looking for these, Jedi with its sticker. What was inside? Well, that was again the widescreen version, but along with your regular content, you got a nice concept art card that has information about it being limited edition. On the back, it's some information actually about the concept art itself. So there's the one for A New Hope, and Empire, and Jedi. Speaking of bonus items that were art, if you bought them at Circuit City, you could get some collectible lithographs. So we have the one here for A New Hope, then The Empire Strikes Back, and of course, Return of the Jedi. Now, the collector's tin from Best Buy was pretty cool. I really liked having them in a box set before you could get a box set anywhere else. You gotta take or leave the concept art or the lithographs for Target and Circuit City. But if you wanted a really kind of cool bonus item, you could have got the Walmart exclusive version of each of these, which actually came with the comic adaptation, the graphic novel. So we have here A New Hope, Empire, and Jedi. Now, the weird thing about this, though, if you look at the covers, the cover there for Jedi, The cover there for Empire, the comic covers this is. And for A New Hope, notice the covers are the original Marvel Comics versions of the comic adaptations, or at least one of their covers. Except at this point, Marvel didn't have the comic license. They had it originally, then it moved to Dark Horse. Eventually it would move back to Marvel, but at this point in time, the license was with Dark Horse Comics. So if you actually pull out the comics themselves, and again, it's just the widescreen version of the film with the comic in there alongside it, the comic had a similar cover, but it was a Dark Horse variant version of the same thing. So this is going to be the original A New Hope adaptation for the first 6 issues of the original Marvel series collected here. Then in the original Marvel run, issues 39 to 44 were the Empire Strikes Back adaptation. So this is a collected version of that. Again, a Dark Horse version of that. And then Jedi was actually a mini-series, a 4-issue mini-series at the time. It was adapted by Marvel back in the day, but it's a Dark Horse version of that one as well. And all of those had been reprinted by Dark Horse previously as classic Star Wars, A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. But these were kind of interesting in that they were actually mirroring not just the Marvel content, which those reprints had as well, but also mirroring their covers. I would also note that there had been a 1997 special edition redo, basically, of an adaptation of A New Hope, and no, these are the original Marvel versions. I would note, by the way, if you're looking for some of those now, I've got some sealed ones here that are in little plastic covers, but you'll notice, kind of hard to see here, but because it's basically the DVD case that's nice and thick and then the comic behind it with some air over here, a lot of times now you'll see these with the part with the comic kind of pushed in, caved in a little bit, because there's just nothing behind that to support it. And of course, this is a new DVD release in the United States. You gotta celebrate it with some commemorative figure packs. Again, no home video items included, but meant to celebrate the home video releases. One for each film this time around, kind of like we saw back in 2004. So we have here the one for A New Hope, which includes Luke, Vader, and Obi-Wan. We have the one here for Empire that includes Han, Chewie, and a Stormtrooper. Loving the way that they've got the film-specific art off there to the side. It's a lot like what we saw with Revenge of the Sith the previous year. And then Jedi here with Luke, Palpatine, and 4 figures this time, because instead of including only one of the droids, R2 and 3PO are both in here. Of course, other regions got these as well. Just a few examples here. This is the UK version of it. Actually, the whole giant thing inside a J-card. What I like about this is it doesn't open from the back. It just opens from the front, which is a much smarter design. You notice there, this one gives a lot more information than the Best Buy one did. This one says 6-disc set, includes both the digitally remastered and original cinema, not theatrical, cinema versions of each film. But they're individual releases, as you might expect, because there was no need for full screen on the UK market. Theirs just said limited edition at the top. They were all in gold, every single one of them. And of course, because you don't, just to grab Jedi as an example, because you don't need it to say widescreen or full screen on the label, they did not, whereas the US, of course, did. If you had bought that at Woolworths, you would have had the opportunity actually to get a special figure with it. Right, down here at the bottom, free and exclusive at Woolworths. And it's basically Vader looking similar to his original version in its packaging there, with the Empire replica kind of card along with it in this version. The back certainly doesn't look anything like the original, but kind of vintage looking, at least on the front. Australia, of course, got their versions. Again, just limited edition up at the top. And as we saw, I believe, with the prequels, I know for sure for Phantom Menace, they had to move their THX stuff up a little bit higher, of course, because they needed to make room for the rating stuff at the bottom. My understanding is that I believe they had a tin that year, like the UK and the US did. The tin that I have for those is actually from the next year, so we'll look at that in 2007. And honestly, my favorite foreign release of these actually comes from Turkey, because it's so cool. So weird. Yeah, probably more weird than cool. That is this. You might say, wait a second. Everybody else, we saw the US, the UK, Japan, they got this. This is that family pack. They got this last year. This was a 2005 release. What's up with this? What is up with that? As Seinfeld might say. Until you look inside and you realize, oh wait, This is basically a 2005-esque slipcover over their versions of the 2006 2-disc releases. Again, widescreen only, so it just says limited edition up at the top. But yeah, they got their 2006 releases inside a package that was effectively, from our eyes at least, a 2005 box set. Kinda neat. But the original trilogy was not the only cool thing being released in 2006. We also got the third of our bonus lightsaber action DVDs. A little more variants than we saw the last couple of times. These again were found inside lightsaber toys. I have a couple of these I can show you. This is the Anakin who actually kind of becomes Vader with a color change blade. What you notice there's sort of a separate little piece that gets attached to the side with tape here that actually holds the DVD that lets you know that this one has that exclusive. It's not actually inside this part of the box. And these have a vertical variation as well. If you'll pardon all the dust on them, there's the vertical variation of the just Vader one, not the Anakin becoming Vader one here. This one we can actually use to see how it all connected. So let me separate it out. So this would be like your regular version on most store shelves. And the exclusive version that collects a lot of dust on my shelves, including where the tape used to be, just has like this extra little piece attached to the end of it. And to get the actual disc out, you can either slide it out or this little prong that opens on the end to give you a little bit of access on that side. But then this is the packaging for the bonus lightsaber action DVD version 3. Notice the packaging is very different than the other ones. It does have that window like the second one did, and the disc itself, it looks like the previous two. But it's not. At least not quite. Same label. Still has a 2005 copyright date for some reason from the previous year. And it does still have chapters 1 and 8 of the Clone Wars micro-series, except presented a little bit differently, no title screens this time around. It does still have the Legend of the Lightsaber, but it has gotten rid of the trailers that were on it and instead has that Story of Anakin Skywalker, one of those Story of items that we first saw on the PVDs in 2004 and then 2005, and that Story of Star Wars bonus disc at Walmart in 2005. But it's just the Anakin portion, nothing else. Also, in terms of continuations from kind of oddball series here, we also see in the UK a couple of new releases of that Star Wars Trivial Pursuit Saga edition, but not as the full-sized board game. And for some reason, in two variations. There's this version here. Now they're referred to as DVD TV games, Trivial Pursuit DVD game, Star Wars Saga edition, in kind of this silvery packaging. And then there's a version with more of an orange Revenge of the Sith type of coloration here. And the idea was you're still playing with all the same questions on DVD, just with different labels. You are still playing using the same question cards, except to determine what questions you're being asked, instead of moving around a board and landing on certain color spaces and stuff like that, you're rolling dice instead to determine it. So just to use the color one here as an example, you have your rule sheet, which I'll let fall, your stack of cards for the questions, DVDs with different labels, and again, you've got yourself two dice. This one giving you which color you're going for, and then this one basically, are you getting questions from cards or from the actual DVD? So a little weird, but a nifty way to kind of streamline that experience. Also an oddball that honestly I could have just left out of here, but I think it's kind of funny given what it's called. There was an interview that aired with George Lucas in March of 2005 in the lead up to Revenge of the Sith that was then put on DVD because 60 Minutes, the news program, would often put different interviews and segments and whatnot on-demand DVDs that you could actually purchase. And in 2006, we saw a purchasable version of that interview, which was entitled The Last Star Wars. Yeah, that was a name that would be true only for a little less than a decade. So, whatever. Personally, I just find the title funny, but it's a good interview with Lucas. As our last thing to look at for Star Wars, we do have an oddball item to look at here in just a second. We also got another of those awesome books of behind-the-scenes stuff, where the book got a super elaborate limited edition giant deluxe version that included a DVD. We previously saw Dressing a Galaxy. This time it's Sculpting a Galaxy. Yeah, this gigantic tome here, magnetized to open up, has a bunch of stuff in here, some of which is still covered in foam here to protect it, but it's got a bunch of like replica pieces of Death Star terrain, a little replica miniature of Luke's little speeder, little figurines to put inside it here, and then over on this edge you'll notice a little kind of jacket, but it's attached. We'll look at that in just a minute, just to show you the rest of this package before I take it out. There's also more magnetic bits here, and you've got a small book plus the entire Sculpting a Galaxy hardback. Inside that little jacket, you've got a little Sculpting a Galaxy DVD, little preview type booklet here, and then an actual DVD. This is also pretty cool stuff, talking about how, you know, the models and stuff were designed and all. Has some cool instances where it's almost like the menu that's animated is like talking to you. That kind of freaked me out initially when I thought it was just a static one. Watched the episode of From the Star Wars Home Video Library about it to maybe get a sense of that. But yeah, Sculpting a Galaxy gets its own DVD just as Dressing a Galaxy did. More original stuff really here, to my recollection, all in this giant limited edition box, which again was expensive back then, even more expensive now in the secondary market, but you can sometimes find it. And lastly, before we leave 2006, we do need to take a look at something that we will see a lot in home video collections, but not here on this series. Remember, in 2000, I pointed out the initial DVD release of Spaceballs and pointed out that it has a flipper disc for full screen and widescreen that has labels on both sides. And I said we would see flipper discs over and over again for Spaceballs, but not this one being repeated. Instead, effectively, the content of this one gets re-released again in 2006 with this blue label version. And the blue label version has the flipper disc again with a label just on one side, not the other. This Spaceballs DVD, this flipper disc with the label on one side, will be re-released over and over and over again, ad nauseum, putting to shame any re-releases of Star Wars stuff all the way through at least 2024. This disc in 2006 is the beginning of that frustrating trend. And for what it's worth, the last time we'll be looking at Spaceballs in this series. So a busy year. Not as busy as a previous year, but the original trilogy hitting with those supposedly unaltered editions that are really the 1993 editions with a splice beginning into A New Hope and all that. The pre-special edition versions getting a DVD release. That was a big deal. And we had some other oddball items to go with it here. So a noteworthy year, even if not as chock-full as the previous year. Next year, though, it's going to be the 30th anniversary of A New Hope in theaters. The 30th anniversary of Star Wars, if you don't count the novelization in 1976. That usually just gets ignored. Surely they're going to do something awesome for the 30th anniversary. We'll find out next time as we check out 2007.